Indian Ocean Tsunami 2004 in Aceh was the biggest natural catastrophe in the last 100 years. The world was shocked. And the upcoming question follows. Is this the first disaster in Aceh? The scientists in all over the world came to Aceh and started doing the research about the ancient tsunami disaster that we call it Paleotsunami.
Welcome to the Sedimentology Lab. My name is Katrin Moneke. I'm a professor in the geosciences here at Wellesley College. And what I do in my research is I try to discover records of earthquakes and tsunamis in the geologic record. My main research project right now is sediments from Indonesia, where the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami happened. And what I want to show today is basically how do we analyze the sediment that this tsunami left behind, and how can we understand how often tsunamis happen in that region. When the 2004 tsunami happened, it was something that was never experienced in that region before. And so the people were saying, we have never seen something like this. How often does this happen? When was the last time that something like this happened? And so the historical record in Aceh is relatively scarce. More and more details are being discovered, but we have probably only a good record until about 1600 AD. We had earlier voyages to Aceh, for example, by Marco Polo in 1300, but we have a relatively scarce record. And basically, we can say that in the record that we have, there's no evidence that something like the 2004 tsunami had ever happened before in that region. So the 2004 tsunami, when it came on shore, it basically eroded a lot of sediment here.
The nature along the coastal saved the record from the past disaster.
So what we see here is basically a cross section through the beach ridge plain. So we cut into the beach ridge plain and make this cross section. And so now we can see these ridges much better. Here we are further inland and we have these old ridges that grow progressively seaward. And this is the youngest ridge that just formed most closely to the Indian Ocean here. And if we look at this area, then we have in between the ridges, this is where you see these low-lying areas that fill up with peat deposits, and this is where we find our tsunami deposits. Dots that you see here, basically, all over the map, these are our coring locations, and this is basically where we took sediment samples, and we took these cores in areas that were accessible because a lot of areas were still flooded here, so we couldn't get to all of the areas. But we took about 200 core samples in this area. This is now here our 10 centimeter thick sediment layer of the 2004 tsunami, and it overlies these peaty deposits in the coastal marshes. Now, if we want to understand how often tsunamis happen in this area, we have to dig a little deeper, and this is why we took our sediment cores. And if we analyze then these sediment cores in a few locations, we actually found older buried sand layers that were probably deposited by prehistoric tsunamis.
So this is the coring equipment we use to take sediment cores. And what we basically do is you line it up with the ground, and then you push in as far as possible until the sediment's too thick and you can't push any farther. And what you want to do is you need to kind of cut the sediment so that it'll come up in the coring equipment. So you turn it all the way around, that basically cuts the sediment. And then you want to pull up while keeping pretty much everything straight. And as you're pulling up, you're basically taking the sediment with you. And then when you get it to the top, what you basically have is the preserved sediment core within here to then you can look at.
So these are the sediments that we take from our sediment cores, and these are all from the 2004 tsunami sand. And you see this one here is basically the one that was taken closest to the shoreline, and we have a coarser grain size here, and then the more you go in this direction, the finer the grain size gets. And these are samples that were taken very far inland, more than 1,000 meters basically inland within these coastal marshes. So we try to understand the grain sizes within the samples that we take from our tsunami sands, and the instrument that we use is this instrument here, laser diffraction particle size analyzer. And what it does basically, it shoots a laser through a solution with the sample, and the light is scattered depending on the grain sizes that we find within the sample. And this light scattering pattern is then measured with this machine, and we understand what the grain size is. So now we see here the two grain size distributions of the samples that we measured. And to the right we have the coarser grain sample, this one here, and we see that the grain sizes are shifted more to the right. The mean grain size is probably in the order of about 500 microns. And on the left we have the finer grain sizes here, and you see it's all shifted a little bit to the left. And so the mean grain size is around 200 microns here. And so what this tells us now is that this deposit here was basically found closer to the shore. When the tsunami then lost its energy further inland, it would only deposit these fine particles further inland. So these are now samples that we took basically from these buried sediment layers that we found within the peaty deposits of the coastal marshes. And with these sand layers, we do the same thing that we did with the 2004 tsunami sand. We analyze the grain sizes to determine if they get finer and finer the further we go inland. Another thing that we do with these samples is we make smear slides from these samples so that we can look at the sample under the microscope. And what we try to find are basically microfossils that would allow us to determine if this sand really came from the ocean environment. And then we have to find out when did these old sand layers were deposited. And what we do then, we take organic debris or organic material from the peat deposits that we find in these coastal marshes, and we take them right above and below these sand layers, and we date them with the radiocarbon method. And with radiocarbon dating, we found out that one of these layers was about 600 years old and the other one was about 1,000 years old. So the last tsunami before the 2004 tsunami in this area happened around 1400 AD. And this is the story of paleotsunamis in Aceh.
Prehistoric tsunami of 7,000 years ago was found in the cave in Great Aceh coastal area.
Kita dapat lihat lapisan-lapisan yang pasirnya sangat bersih. Artinya pasir itu datang dari laut. Yang pertama, yang kedua, dia ditumpuk pada saat yang sangat singkat sehingga tidak sempat bercampur dengan guano tadi. Kami sudah menghitung sekitar ada 7 sampai 10 lapisan yang kita gali di sana, dan dari masing-masing lapisan tersebut kita dapatkan katakanlah paling atas itu adalah tsunami 2004. Tsunami 2004 lumayan tebal. Kemudian di bawah dari tsunami 2004 yang sudah sempat kita identifikasi yaitu lapisan yang kira-kira berumurnya yang terbentuk 2.800 tahun yang lalu. Dari mana kita dapat? Dari carbon dating dari organisme-organisme yang terdapat pada lapisan tersebut. Kemudian di bawahnya terdapat yang lapisan yang berumur kira-kira 3.300 tahun yang lalu, dan di bawahnya ada 5.400 tahun yang lalu, dan yang umur gua seperti saya katakan tadi sekitar 7.000 ribuan tahun itu adalah dasar daripada gua ini.
Tsunami deposit sediment is not the only records of Paleotsunami. Aceh already have a local knowledge related to the earthquake and tsunami occurrence in the past that can be found in the old manuscript of 100 years ago. These manuscripts are spread out in some places and museums.
Di dalam naskah disebutkan bahwa jika terjadi gempa pada bulan Rajab di waktu duha akan terjadi tsunami. Ada dua penafsiran yang bisa ditunjukkan. Bahwa pertama adalah gempa yang terjadi dan penafsiran masyarakat saat itu. Jadi itu bisa menunjukkan bahwa ramalan, tetapi di sisi lain itu bisa juga menunjukkan bahwa itulah rekamannya, bahwa mereka merekam efek yang terjadi setelah gempa. Nah, yang di waktu salah satunya adalah di waktu duha pada bulan Rajab itu akan terjadi air laut keras naik ke darat. Nah, pernyataan air laut keras naik ke darat itu menunjukkan itulah yang disebut tsunami. Itu ada paleografi atau perkembangan tulisan atau perkembangan bahasa yang terjadi di setiap abadnya. Nah, perkembangan inilah yang diwariskan oleh setiap generasi kepada generasi selanjutnya. Itu yang kita sebutkan adalah warisan pengetahuan, ya, agar masyarakat atau agar penduduk di pesisir pantai agar memahami jika terjadi gempa di waktu duha, walaupun tidak disebutkan besar skala Richternya, efek yang ditimbulkan bagaimana, tapi kewaspadaan itu pasti ada. Nah, ini terjadi pada semua naskah dalam periode yang berbeda-beda.
Local knowledge about tsunami are recorded in local languages known as Hmong. Besides, it's also called Ibana in Gloro.
Sebelum terjadi gempa 2004, sebelumnya nenek dari sebelah mama juga pernah menceritakan masalah tsunami, tapi waktu itu belum istilahnya tsunami dengan ibena, air besar, air bah. Kan? Jadi pada waktu itu kakek lahir sekitar tahun 1500. Waktu air laut itu naik setinggi pucuk kelapa, ya, kan apa namanya, datang orang dari Menasah waktu itu di azan kan ke pinggir laut, sehingga air itu pecah di pucuk kelapa tuh, nggak sampai ke daratan gitu kan. Jadi pas 2004 terjadi gempa tuh nenek ada juga bilang lagi pasti ini air besar, naik air besar kan. Karena waktu nenek itu udah mulai pikun, jadi kita nggak ini lagi, nggak apa namanya, nggak peduli itu, paling ada gempa susulan gitu kan. Tapi beberapa menit kemudian memang jadi yang seperti yang tahun 1900.
Kalau diperkirakan sih lamanya ini 1 kilo atau 2 kilo sudah dikikis oleh laut. Lama ini ada pendatang dari luar, di orang Cina, Belanda ya kan. Jadi kan pecahan-pecahan tembok ya kan. Di apa tadi kayak apa namanya? Pinggan cawan. Jadi saya pun ya sebagai orang nelayan ya sering juga melaut, bahkan sekali-sekali saya tuh sering menjumpai pendasi-pendasi peninggalan singkil lama dulu, jaraknya kurang lebih ya 1 kilo atau 1,5 kilo yang sering saya jumpai.
But unfortunately, this important story is only transferred in small family and small region, not spread out throughout Aceh.
Ini sejarahnya singkil lama ini, Bu. Menurut ya nenek-nenek kami lah ya kan. Nah, singkil lama itu sebenarnya berdekatan sama pulau banyak. Sampai suara ayam berkokok itu kedengaran. Jadi pas begitu ya loro di istilah sekarang, di zaman sekarang tsunami di abad 18 itu. Bahkan terus turut lagi sampai di abad 19 dan 19 dan 2000.
We have to transfer this knowledge from generation to generation to remember and learn the lesson about past disaster for disaster risk reduction in the future.